By the end of 2025, most marketing agencies will be fighting just to maintain their profitability, because we're no longer in those SMMA heydays with brands being flush with cash, that go-lucky spending from consumers with the stimulus checks, or you being able to sign clients just from a cold DM or a cold email. Now we're in the time of economic uncertainty. We're in the time of skyrocketing CACs, brands who push back on your budget, or AI and overseas labor that are quickly coming in to commoditize the space. In this environment, if you are still constantly chasing new clients, then you will find that this is very quickly becoming very unsustainable. And that is exactly what 90% of the agencies are doing right now. They're increasing their spend just to try and sign more and more clients. But that's not what the top 10% of agencies are doing. And I know this because I spent most of my time studying these agencies like MP Digital, like WPP and their portfolio companies like Ogilvy, and like all of our most profitable and fastest growing clients. And what I found is that all of these top 10% agencies, they are obsessing about one metric in particular. And this is a metric that 90% of agencies completely ignores. But first, my name is Joe DeWitt and I run Agency CFO, where we help agencies take control of their finances, and track their numbers, and help them stay profitable as they keep scaling. And the metric that I am talking about is net revenue retention. So first, let's dig in what net revenue retention even is. In short, what this metric measures is how much revenue you lose or gain from current clients month over month. And so 100% net revenue retention means that you are not losing any revenue, but you're also not gaining any new revenue from your current clients. So we're not looking at the revenue from any new clients here. But as you can tell then, if you can maintain a net revenue retention of 100%, that means that you are simply staying flat without having to get any new clients or spend any money to get new clients. And so most of the agencies will be slightly below 100% because you will always lose some of your clients. But what the top agencies are doing to offset this is continuously try and upsell their current clients, whether that's with different offers or with a performance-based structure, so that they can offset this natural churn of some clients with revenue from their existing clients, with a revenue increase from their existing clients. And so just to show you how powerful the impact of this focus can be, I want to talk about one of our clients who took their net revenue retention from 77% to 92%. And so while this might not sound like a big deal, it is in fact a massive deal because it's a 15% increase on the retention of their revenue. And so this was an agency that was doing around 300K a month. And so a 15% increase in their net revenue retention means that they are essentially saving an additional 45K per month, because this was revenue that they were before just simply losing every month through churn. However, now they're actually managing to offset most of this churn that they now don't have to spend more money on to acquire new clients, just to kind of break even on the revenue they were losing. And so if you take this over the entire year, this 15% means over 500K in revenue that before they had to sign lots and lots of new clients for just to offset. And so I hope that illustration really brings the point home that if you can focus on net revenue retention and you're not just, avoiding the loss of clients, but you're actually offsetting this with the upsell or like the addition of extra services that you can provide to new clients, you'll find yourself in a vastly better position than if you were just focusing on constantly bringing in new clients and spending the money, typically $1,000 to $3,000 a month per client, just to try and stay even. And so the top agencies 100% focused on not just maintaining their current clients, but actually growing these clients. I will show you a very simple way that you can actually track this metric, because the first step to improving it is knowing where you currently are at. And here we have it. So this template is one that we'll put in the description, so you can download it for free to also start tracking your net revenue retention. But what we have here is just a very simple view where you can keep track of your clients and how much they are paying you every single month. And now to look at net revenue retention, which is hidden underneath this little plus sign, you will see the exact percentage per month. Now, how this is calculated is that we look at the previous month and we see all the clients who paid us in the last month. And then for those clients, we see how much they paid us as well in the current month. And that's captured in this formula here. So where in the last month, the payment amount was greater than 0, we're dividing that by the sum of the clients in. So what we're doing is we are summing up all the payments from the clients who paid us in the last month, and we're dividing that by that same amount to get the net revenue retention. So for this month, we see it's 100% net revenue retention because we didn't lose any clients, but we also didn't grow any clients. Now, if we lost half of this, let's say, so this is now half of the current clients, what we see is that we get a 50% net revenue retention. As you know, maybe we grew some of these clients. Now we have a net revenue retention far above 100%. And so this is how you can keep track of it. Whereas like, let's say you do lose a client, then you can still maintain your net revenue retention by upselling another client. And so this dynamic is super important to understand, because if you can manage to always stay at or above 100%, then you literally don't have to sign any new clients and you'd still be in at least a similar, if not a better spot. And so key here is to have actually things to upsell clients, because you can't just keep going to clients and saying that you're going to increase your prices. And so having either different services or, like I mentioned, a performance-based offer that you can actually, through better performance, earn more from these clients is key if you want to be able to offset the loss of other clients. But tracking your NRR is just one part of the puzzle. Now I will share the top 5 strategies that I've seen from these top 10% of agencies to share what they are doing different from the rest to really prioritize this growth in NRR. And so the first point is that they are staying connected with their clients. You know, I see many agencies, you know, they put a lot of effort in the signing and the sales for new clients, but then their onboarding is already a mess. Then once they started, they're just handed off to some account managers who maybe not have provided, who are not provided with the best instructions. And so when the client is super excited to come on board, then immediately the service they receive is not of the highest level. They might not receive a clear roadmap of what success would look like for them. They're not reassured of some of the objections they had. It's just a messy process for them. So super important, if you want to put yourself in the best position to upsell the client later on, you need to stay involved, which doesn't have to be you, which can be a team member, but there needs to be a real serious involvement, and you need to really put the client in the most comfortable position that they are always happy with your service, and that when you have something to upsell them, that they are more than happy to pay you even more money. So point 1, super important to stay connected with the client so you're always able to upsell. Then point number 2 is to have churn indicators, because as I mentioned, it is going to be inevitable that some clients will leave. In some cases this might be because of just a bad fit for the client. In some cases it might be because the client wants to take it in-house. In other cases, it might be because the communication wasn't up to standard or that the results just weren't up to scratch. And so whatever your most common reasons are, you need to not only track why the client left, but you need to track what indicators you might be able to identify that are leading up to the reason clients leave. And so these indicators can just very simply be, the results they're getting from your service. But it might also be more qualitative points, like how happy the client is, how quickly the client replies to your messages, or just whether they are showing up for the calls that you have with them. And so whatever your most common churn reasons are, that is what you need to take as a starting point to figure out what are some of the indicators that you could be tracking to try and prevent the actual churn. Because what we see is that in some cases, up to half of the churn clients could have been prevented or at least delayed by a few months by actually being proactive with the reasons that are leading up to the churn. So point 2, super important, is to have churn indicators so that you can actually prevent churn and so that you don't have to upsell as many clients to keep your NRR above 100%. Point number 3 is to have upsell indicators. So just like you're looking at churn, you also should be looking at your upsell opportunities in the same way. This again might be just a simple performance tracking system where if a client is getting exceptional performance, you use this as the indicator to either present a new service that you have for them, or maybe discuss a rate increase or whatever method you have to try and get more value from the client. Again, can be different ways. They could be the exact same things as the churn indicators, but you need to have a process that when these indicators are telling you that this client could be primed for an upsell, and you actually have a system to make the upsell. So point number 3, have clear upsell indicators. When you should approach the client for the upsells. Then point number 4 is to train your team specifically on churn prevention and account growth. Because what is all too common is that we see the account managers or media buyers or whichever roles you have that work on the clients, that they're just performing, the tasks according to a checklist or an SOP. They might be very relatable and they might be fine with clients, but not many are actually trained to consistently try and upsell the clients or act on these churn indicators we talked before. And so your training with your team needs to go beyond just delivering the service, but you need to actually train them and most importantly, reward them for preventing churn and upselling clients. And so one easy way you can do this is to literally pay the team a bonus every time they upsell a client. And this is a very direct incentive for them to consistently try and find the clients they can upsell and to actually make the pitch for them so that these accounts keep growing. And then point number 5 of what the top agencies are doing differently from all the other agencies is to actually segment their clients over the status that can be given to them. Because as harsh as it may sound, not all clients are the same. You'll have some clients who are frankly not as important or not as impactful for your agency as others are. You might have some clients who are extremely well connected, who are primed to be upsold down the line if they're receiving an exceptional service. And so I'm not saying that you should, ignore your bottom clients, as any client is worth it and any client could grow into a prime client. But it is worth to pay attention to those particular clients who has the most opportunity or who have the biggest network to become some of those super clients who either pay you vastly more or are really driving different streams of revenue for your business, like referrals or like even brand reputation. So segment your clients over the status that you feel is most appropriate for them and make sure that your top clients receive a top service, as they can be real brand ambassadors. And so that's exactly how the top agencies are focusing on net revenue retention to scale profitably in 2025. But as you already saw throughout this video, there's no point in fully focusing on net revenue retention if you don't even have the retention part nailed down. And so I have another video where I shared exactly how we helped another client pretty much slash their churn in half, which has added another 50k MRR for them within just 6 months. And so in that video, I go much more in depth on those churn indicators and on some of the steps that you can take to lower your churn. So if churn is something your agency struggles with, then watch that video, as there's a good chance that you can implement some of those points to already lower your churn. Because the lower your churn is, the fewer upsells you need to make to still maintain 100% net revenue retention. And so I hope this video was useful, and I'll see you in the next one.